Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Professor Rodriguez, and today we're going to be going over some practice problems for JavaScript functions. Um, to start, I gave my class, CIS 271, some questions to work on in class, and here I would like to go over the solution. For those of you who want to practice this and are not in my course, feel free to look at the document that is attached here, um, or that will be linked in the description. You can download this document, try it yourself before you look through the solutions. All right. So we have a setup here. We want to create an HTML file and two JS uh, files, and then three functions, one per problem, using the different types of functions that are available within JavaScript. We have named functions, function expressions, and arrow functions. All right, so we'll start with the setup and then we'll go into each of these problems. So over here, I have VS Code. That's what I'm going to be using. I find it pretty good, and I suggest my students to use this editor, but you can use whatever editor you would like to solve this, as long as you can, write HTML in JavaScript. So I'm gonna create a new file by clicking on this plus sign here on VS Code, and I'm gonna call it, practice functions.html and save that. Notice that it opens the HTML file for us right here. We can use emit abbreviation to create the headings and the head and the body, you know, uh, and so forth. We can change the file to be called JavaScript functions, even though I didn't ask for that. Uh, it's a good practice to change it. In the body, I asked you to create three headings, so we're just gonna create three H1s. Uh, I mean, you can even do something like that. JavaScript function practices, practice, and then we can create maybe three H2s with question 1, question 2, and question 3, like so. And then create three paragraphs, one below each heading. So a paragraph with ID equals answer 1, answer 2, and answer 3, and all of them will have the content. The answer will go here. Let me make this text a little bit smaller by zooming out. There you go. And then we'll paste this under question 2 and question 3, and we'll change to answer 2 and answer 3. Those IDs will be used later on so that we can modify the files. So we can modify these elements rather. All right, I'm gonna create a new folder called JS, and inside this folder, I'm gonna click the plus sign, and I'm gonna create two files, functions.js, and then another file called um, testfile.js. There you go. So the first problem in functions.js, create a named function called convertTime, which accepts one parameter that represents the amount of time in seconds. The function should convert the provided time into minutes and seconds and return a string that contains minutes followed by seconds. For example, the argument 72, the function returns 1 colon 12. All right. So here we have a simple conversion. We have to convert seconds into minutes and seconds. So some important things to note is that 1 minute has 60 seconds. Um, and we want to create a function for this. So before we go into the function, let's just make sure that this works. I'm going to open this with the live server. There's a live server extension that allows you to open the website. There you go, just to make sure it looks okay. So this looks as we want it to look. So we're good to go here. Now I'm gonna need to create uh, this function over here in functions.js. But before we do anything, I'm going to add those scripts into my program. So functions.js, I'm gonna include first, and then source equals um, testfile.js. I'll include second. There we go. We have both of our files included here, so they will be part of the HTML. I suggest for now that you put your script tags at the bottom of the body, all right? Because then your content loads first, and if there is an error on your JS function, then it's okay because the content will already have loaded. So, all right. So let's get started here. So I need a function. So to create a function, a named function, we're going to use the keyword function to begin with. So then we give it a name, which I'm asking you to give the name convert time. Um, and it accepts one parameter, which will be the time in seconds. So function convert time, and you can call it seconds. All right. Now before we do anything, I usually like to kind of create a little plan um, before we continue here. Even though I'm telling you what to do, it's always good to describe what the function name is and what the parameters are. Um, so here we would say seconds um, represents the amount of time in seconds, and then return. If this function returns anything, we explain here. It returns a string representing the time in minutes and seconds, and in the format of min column seconds, right? And then finally, um, the purpose. This function um, accepts, converts the time in seconds into a string containing minutes and seconds. All right, that's what we want to do. So uh, that's what we have here. So we have seconds, which is our argument. So we're going to need to convert into minutes and seconds. So we're gonna maybe need two variables here, one for the minutes, let minutes, and you could already do the calculation here, but I'm going to just declare the two variables first. So we're gonna have one let minutes and one let remaining seconds exist here. We're going to convert seconds into minutes. Um, So to convert seconds into minutes, we use the relationship that 1 minute equals 60 seconds. So if we want to convert, let's say, 60 seconds, then we divide it by 60 in order to get minutes. 1 minute. If we have 120 seconds, then we divide by 60 and we get 2 minutes. That's the idea here. The only thing that we have to be aware is that we want this to be integers, right? We don't want this to be um, we don't want this to be a decimal point. So we're going to have to use that fact over here as we are calculating it. So minutes, it's going to equal seconds, however many seconds we have, divided by 60. But the thing is, this needs to be an integer. So we have to convert this into int. So to do so, we're going to use parse int, because parse int will convert this result into the integer format. And then the remaining seconds will be equal to the seconds modulus 60, right? It's the modulus here to calculate the remainder. So if, let's say, I have 72 as my amount of time, right? Then 72 divided by 60 converted into an integer is going to be 1. And then 72 modulus 60, which is the remainder, is going to be 12, because I can divide 70 once into 60 and the remaining amount is 12. So that's what I should get. I should get 1 and 12. So now we need to return the string. So you could create a variable for it, so you can just return down here. We can say, uh, converted time maybe for that, and create a string with resulting time, something like that. So we can say that converted time equals, and we're going to say minutes plus a column. Now this, because this is an integer and this is a string, because one side is a string, it's going to convert the minutes into a string. And then same thing with the seconds, the remaining seconds. All right. And then we can return this converted time as our answer. Okay, so that's our function here. Again, if you want to, you didn't need to declare uh, and then calculate. You could, as you declare, you could initialize it and so forth. But I like to keep it organized in this way. All right. So now we have the function. Now, once we have this function, we have to test this function. And that's part B over here. In test file, create a program that prompts the user for the time of a video in seconds. Using the function created in part A, calculate and display the time in the paragraph with ID answer 1. So basically, let's go into here. I want the answer to go right there. And we're going to prompt the user for this um, answer. So here maybe we can have like question 1, um, like so. Um, and just to document everything, we'll say Professor Rodriguez, we'll put today's date, and then we'll put the purpose, JS function practice problems. And then question one, um, convert seconds. All right. And here, the first thing is we want to prompt the user for the time in seconds. Then we want to convert time and then display answer. All right. That's basically the three steps we want to do here. So we can create a variable, let's say let user time or video time in this case equal to, and then we can prompt the user to provide the answer over here. Um, enter time of video in seconds, like so. Semicolon. So I'll put another parenthesis in here, and then we can say let result equals. So now we have this video time, right? And we want to figure out what the result is. So we have the function here that we just created called convert time, and we can just use that function now. Notice that VS Code realizes that this exists now, and that I can pass this function this argument to this function. I can pass this variable like so. And then to display the result, I'm asking you to display in the paragraph with ID answer 1. So if we look at our HTML file, we have an element here of that ID. We want to change the contents of this element to be the answer to this question. So what we're going to do is we're going to use document dot get element by ID, and the ID that we're passing is answer 1, and we don't want the element, we want the text content of this element, and we want to set it equal to our result. So by saving this, and let me open, before I save, let me open this. By saving this, notice that now I'm going to be prompted. So if I say 72, as I said before, and I click OK, notice that we see 1 minute and 12 seconds. And that's what I wanted to create here. If we try a different number, something like 120, maybe 145. So that should be 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes, 120 seconds, and 25 seconds, so 225, and so forth. So this works. This is how we solve this first problem. Oops. There we go. Um, Now, the only problem here, if you only have like 5 seconds left or anything like that, it doesn't really show you the zero, for example, like 0, 5, it just shows you 5. So we would have to deal with that in a different way by providing some formatting. But that's not the point of today's lesson. All right. So um, problem number two, now this one, because it's a function expression and 3 is an arrow function, I just asked you to solve it right here. I didn't want you to create the function or use them in the function.js file because they work a little bit differently. We're putting the function inside a variable. So usually they don't really go in here because they're not separated. In this case, this function, the named function is hoisted, meaning that um, it's going to get read basically by your compiler ahead of time, and we know that this function is here no matter kind of where you created. But this function expression is not. It's gonna go in the order in which it reads the code because it's placed in a variable. So anyway, here we're gonna create question 2, and we'll say finding distances. Now for these problems, we have a function expression in the find distance variable, and that takes 4 arguments, and basically they're points, right? And the points will have x and y coordinates. So we have x1, y1 for the first point, and x2, y2 for the second point. And they represent certain location in a map, in the 2D map. So if you think about it as an x and y coordinate axis, right? um, then that's what we are dealing with here. And we just want to find the distance between those 2 points. So the distance formula is as follows, right? We take the square root of these um, the values. So you may use this math.square root and math.pow to assist you in completing this problem. So the first thing we're gonna need to do is create the function expression. In this case, um, we're gonna have the function expression, and I like to always create the definition like so. Function name, find distance, um, and then we define what type of parameters you're gonna need. So we're gonna have x1, um, the x position of point 1, um, y1, the y, or maybe I should say coordinate here, coordinate, um, coordinate of point 1, x2, the x coordinate of point 2, and then y2, the y coordinate of point 2. All right, so the return, so this function returns the distance between 2 points. Um, and then the purpose of this function is to calculate the distance between point 1, which is x1, y1, and point 2, which is x2, y2. All right, so that's our goal basically here. So, but again, now it's a function expression. So we're gonna use a variable, or we can use let here to keep it local. So we can say let find distance, which is a variable, equal to this function that's going to take x1, I1, x2, y2. All right, now this side, the right side of this variable, this is what we call a um, anonymous function. And we're going to see anonymous functions sometimes being used, which is why I wanted you to see the exercise like this. In this case, we're placing in a variable, but it doesn't need to be in a variable. It could be an argument of another function, for example. All right. So here we can just say something like this, let distance equal, and it's the square root of that. So we can use math.sqrt as our function, and inside of these, we'll have 2 expressions, so we can use math.pow. You can also use the exponent operator with the times, and this is x2 minus x1, comma 2, because you need a number, which is the subtraction of those two to the power of something. So the 2 over here plus, and then again the math pow, um, and then y2 minus y1 comma 2, which is the power. If you want to, you could put this inside um, of another variable if you want to keep it more organized. But like this is fine. We don't even need this uh, let distance equals. We can even just say return, right? Because we're doing the math in one go in this case. So depending on how much readability you would like, then you might want to separate these into different variables, if you would like to. But in this case, we don't have to. This can be done in one go. All right, so in testfile.js, prompt the user to provide 4 points. So ask the user for 4 points, or that's not correct. Uh, ask the user for 4 coordinates, not 4 points, indicating the 2 points. There you go. And we want to use this function, calculate the distance, and then display results, right? Um, so in this case here, we're gonna ask for the 4 coordinates. Now you can name it like this, or you can name it differently. So we'll say, um, let let's say user x1, um, just to distinguish. These are local variables to the function. If I call this one x1, it would be a different x1 than the one in the function. There would be two different variables. So we just say user x1 equals prompt, and we'll create, provide the x coordinate of point 1 like so. And we can do that for all the other x1, y1, provide the y coordinate of point 1, and then x2, provide the x coordinate of 2, and then y2, oops, prompt, provide the y coordinate of point 2. So those are our coordinates, and we can use this function let answer 2 equal to find distance. We use it just like a named function, and notice it's telling us here to use 4 different arguments. So we can say user x1, user y1, user x2, and then user y2. All right, we pass those 4 elements to this, and that should have the answer for us, and um, display the results. Again, we want to take this element over here that has answer 2, and we want to modify its text content. So we're going to do a document dot get element by ID, and answer 2 is our element. Dot text content is what we want to change, and we want that to equal answer 2. All right, so I'm saving these here, and automatically we still have the question 1, so I'll put 125 again. Provide the x coordinate of point 1. Let's make it easy. Let's just do, let's keep the y coordinate the same, right? So let's say 5, and then y coordinate, let's say 2. But then for the x coordinate, we'll say 10. So the distance between 5 and 10 should be 5. And we'll leave the y coordinate as 2 again. So notice, something went wrong. Find distance. Went into answer 2, and answer 2 equals, maybe it just didn't refresh. Oops. Save again. 125, 5, 2, 10, 2. There you go. Now it's 5. So what had happened before is that when I saved this, it wasn't the latest version of the question that appeared here. So this is correct. All right. And then last but not least, we can go over question number 3. Um, Question number 3 is the arrow function, and that's the money conversion. All right, so for this, we want to use an arrow function. The arrow function, just as a reminder, combines these um, this function expression with the return. Usually you want to use an arrow function when you just have one line of code and it's really quick to code it. It saves you a little bit of time to create the arrow function. So um, the way that you do it. So here, basically, you're going to say let some variable equal. You're going to use, instead of the keyword function, you're just going to use the parameter list, and then you're going to use an arrow to indicate what is it returning. All right. So in test file, create an arrow function that is held in a variable called dollars to pound that accepts two parameters, the amount of dollars and today's rates for the English pounds currency. Your function should convert the amount of dollars and return the amount of English pounds. For example, today's rate is 0.72 British pounds. If someone wants to send $25 at this rate, they would receive 18.12 pounds. Prompt the user to enter the amount of dollars and today's rates for British pounds, and use the function you created to display the result within the text content of the paragraph with ID answer 3. So again, this is going to be very, very similar to question number 2. We're going to say let, um, and we can provide it a name like dollars to pounds. Just to keep it consistent, let's also document this. We'll say function name dollars to pounds. This is going to have two parameters. Parameter 1 is dollars, um, or we'll call it the amount of dollars to be converted. And then we'll have R as the second parameter, which is the rate of um, conversion from dollars to pounds. All right, and then the return will be the um, the currency in English pounds. So the purpose of this function to convert dollars into English pounds using the provided rate. Um, all right, that's the idea here. So to create an arrow function, we would say let the name of the function equals. But now we don't need to use the word function. With the arrow function, we just pass the two parameters. So the first one will be dollars, the second one will be rate, and we do the arrow to indicate we want to return something, and what we want to return. Basically, it's just the amount of dollars, which is D, times the rate, which is 0.72, and that's it. All right. So we use these two parameters and we apply this mathematical function and we return that as the result. All right, so we're just gonna prompt the user for dollars and rate. So in let sorry dollars, we can even say user dollars equals prompt, enter uh, enter dollar amount, and then let rate equals prompt, enter rate. $1 equals British pounds, like so. So now we have the two prompts. I forgot my semicolon over here. Then we can convert amount to English pounds. So then we can just say let answer 3 in this case equal to, um, we use the dollar to pounds function and we just pass user dollars, which is the variable that I used, and the rate. And so these two values are gonna get passed. They're going to go into this arrow function. It's gonna multiply them by each other and put the result inside this variable. Again, I left this quite easy. It's just a multiplication, just so you can get used to how to write it. It's not necessarily faster. It would be faster just to multiply those two variables. But in a more complicated scenario, I hope you can see how this makes it more useful, right? To not have to write that equation over and over again. So then here we can display the results. And we can get that by saying document dot get element by ID. The ID now is going to be answer 3, and we want to change the text content of that paragraph, and we want that to equal answer 3. So there we go. I'm gonna stop and refresh just in case. Let me cancel all of this. Cancel, cancel, cancel. There you go. So now let me refresh one more time. So 142 for question number 1. Again here, let's try different coordinates. 7, 2, 7, 8. That should be 6. And then the dollar, we said $25.72. We'll click OK, and we get 222, 6, and 18. And that should be the answer for these. Notice here I said 18.12. There was a little error because I used the wrong ratio. The ratio should actually have been 0.724 something, so it says 18. I'll fix that right now for those of you who do later, but this should just be $18. All right. But anyway, I hope you find this useful and helpful. And if you have any question, please just contact me. All right. Um, anyway, I have everybody has a good day or evening or morning. And I'll see you next time.